And now let us speak about human intelligence and why people talk about two or even three heads that are better than a single one in IT. So, what is open source? Open source is teamwork of multiple heads. In order to get into the topic, we invite the head of development, community development in information security, Anton Kutepov.
Всем привет! Сегодня мы поговорим про...
Hello everyone. Today we will cover the topic of technological review and a little bit of philosophical statements, because open source is more about interaction between people and what they have at heart. A few words about me. My name is Anton. I work for more than 12 years in information security. I mainly work with hacker attacks. I understand how they work and I know where they leave traces. Those who know about contribution in projects, I'm also a contributor in multiple open source projects in information security. So basically, I share my time and knowledge for free for other projects to become better. I also work in security experts community, develop this kind of community where we help people create their own objects and share them with the rest of the world. A few words on the collaboration and usefulness of collaboration, why it helps us develop technologies. Peter Hitchens, very famous person in the world of digital communities, wrote a book called Social Architecture: Building Digital Communities. And he quotes the prince from Niccolo Machiavelli, who quotes Titus Livius. And he quotes that quotation where in The Prince, the book tells you, listen to your subordinates, because even the smartest person in the crowd will not select the best possible solution compared to the collaboration of multiple people and their general consensus. And when we're talking about long-term solution, the pluralism of opinions allows for the most optimal suggestion. And here you can see the QR code. You can read the translation of that book in Russian. It's very interesting and useful one. And obviously, as the host mentioned, information security, information technology in general, the pluralism of opinions and collaboration of experts from different areas with different experience allows for the best case solutions with the best possible technologies. And here we have this collectivization and crowd wisdom that allow us to create really useful projects that have fewer errors and mistakes, and they actually implement the functions that other people need. Have you heard about open source software? Please, by raise of hand. Great. Many people heard about open source software, and it's very good. Obviously, for the people online, I would like to tell you about OSS, or open source software. It's basically software which uses open license, and this open license allows you to modify and read this code. If you can use this software and do whatever you want with this and give it whoever you want it. It provides you a few angles of freedom. And if it allows you this kind of freedom, it can be free or libre software. So these are a little bit different, and between free and libre software, in the history of these communities, they were a little bit antagonistic in the sense on what should be considered the correct approach to sharing knowledge. Now a few words regarding the milestones for technological revolution. What I will be covering today, the general idea is that if it was not for the open source, then this world would have been different. Maybe the same approaches, maybe similar technologies, similar applications would have been invented by other people, by other companies, but that would have been closed. Though, thanks to open source and thanks to its availability to multiple many thousands and millions of experts here in this timeline, we can say that in 2022 we have ChatGPT. And I will cover different industries or different areas rather of IT industry, and we will see how they changed because of open source. But first, just a little introductory speech on why I decided to talk about this and even think about how open source affects our world. Please, by raise of hand, do you know about Steve Jobs? Great, everybody knows about him, and this is not a surprise. And do you know about Dennis Ritchie? Significantly fewer people. Dennis Ritchie, for those who do not know, is a person who basically created C programming language. And by the way, have you heard about C? Oh, even more people, that's great. And as we can see here on the timeline, C programming language was created in the 1970s, and it was the basically founding father for the open source technologies. Well, the C itself is not considered open source, but thanks to C, we have operating system like called Unix, Unix Lite, then we have Linux based on Unix, and so on. In general, this is the fact, and a little bit sad, that after Jobs died, and he died in 2011, a week after that, Dennis Ritchie died. And the sorrow that was caused by Jobs' death, it went for a few weeks. But the information that Dennis Ritchie died basically did not stay in the news, and only few people covered it, and only the experts who really knew about this person, they were very indignant and angry that people didn't care about him passing away. So we will go back to this original timeline because I would like to introduce you into the context, because you might not know about some of these projects. I will tell you a little bit about them, and then I will show their connections and collaborations and what other benefits we get from those projects. Okay. The first group of project is Unix-like operating systems, like GNU project, GNU Linux, Linux kernel, the line of FreeBSD projects, those operating systems that allowed to, let's say, put our servers that compute, they were allowed to get into absolutely new level. People started to use those operating systems, they had more computational powers for their processing, they were able to work with more data, and later you were able to see how it affected basically each and every aspect of our life. Next, Git at GitHub. GitHub is a platform. It's not open source as a project, but Git is a relatively an open source project, but in general, this is the foundation for the whole open source development. There are also other versions for other platforms for the version control. Please raise your hand if you used or even heard about Git. Okay, we have very technical audience here. You know a lot, you heard a lot, you've seen a lot, but maybe for those who don't really know, maybe for the online audience, Git is a system that allows to make a snapshot of your program in time, and then you can go back in time and take a look at what your program looked like and use that functionality at that time. And GitHub is a platform where you can upload all your states of that platform, and you can share it with your community for free, your source codes. Now, by raise of hand, do you know the logo in the center? Please raise a hand if you know this logo in the center. Yes, this is logo of Google Chrome browser. They have an open analog, which gave basically its birth to its browser called Chromium. And if not for WebKit engine and Chromium project, our smartphones and the browsers like Safari, for example, they have different interface, they have different role, but all of those would have been completely different, and the experience working with web applications would have been different. I do remember like about 15, 17 years ago, what websites looked like. These were very short, very poor interface. Well, the 1990s interface, poor animation or no animation, very poor choice of colors, no dynamic. Then we had open source browsers. They work with data visualization, which we can see in modern browsers, and this is how they develop. Next is JavaScript frameworks. Take a look at what happened before, what web looked like even 15 years ago, then the maximum interactivity you could achieve was through programming languages. People were able to create snowflakes that would be falling down as some kind of animation during the new year, or maybe playing some MIDI music in the background. At that time, JavaScript language was not as developed as it is now. It was used for some local features for different websites. But as the technology matured with new web servers, with cloud computing, people started to invest more and more in creating new features, developing new languages that allowed to create this kind of products for web applications. And JavaScript frameworks, multiple modifications of JavaScript allowed at least to go to the next stage for communication at the time. And there is a framework called Node.js that allowed to take the experience from some features in web browser and transfer it to server components. And thanks to that, we have a lot of different applications that use this language. It should have been only for a browser, but now we can use it and create even full-fledged application products. Python, have you heard about it? Have you heard about Python? Once again, almost 100% of the audience. This language is actively used by programmers and by experts on data analysis. Here you can see different frameworks and different Python libraries which are included. And thanks to these programming languages can solve multiple different problems. And because this is an open source project and it's developed by the community, they have a lot of different libraries. And because of that, it boosted machine learning and technologies which are built using AI and ML. Later, we will see how it's connected and interconnected to. Next. Let's get back to this schematic. Here we can see in blue, we can see certain areas where you can include basically our lives, which means that something connected with PC, mobile devices, web services, cloud computing, machine learning, and so on. This is dark blue. In general, from top to bottom and left to right, we have this historical development. And on this timeline, we will be able to see different timeframes when these kind of technologies were born. But originally we have C, and this programming language allowed to create Unix-like operating system, first Unix, and then to have other like FreeBSD, Linux, and so on. We have GNU, we have Linux kernel. Thanks to those, thanks to the merging in technological ecstasy, we were able to get other operating systems. For example, thanks to Linux kernel, we have Android, which you have on your non-iOS smartphones. From Unix, we get Mac OS. In purple, you can see proprietary software, which are not open source. They are basically commercial software. But you can see where they originated from and how they changed our digital life. And Windows, you can see, just for the sake of being there, that you can see that it's not only macOS. And Microsoft operating system actually took a lot from open source software. And we do know that during the last few years, we have in Windows Linux kernel, and we can have two operating systems running on the same workstation. We also have a cluster which is dedicated for web services like web server Apache, which affected the popularity of GNU Linux operating system. And thanks to the application of that new development, specifically for the web development, that is why they were able to develop the Linux itself, GNU itself, and the web too. Already covered Node.js. Now let's go back to the ChatGPT and the path to ChatGPT and modern technologies which were covered by the previous speaker. Thanks to the open source and utilities and tools from open source GNU, now we have containers like Dockers, Cybernetis, that allows you to use and control those containers. And obviously this is a simplified schematic, because if we go really deep and put all the connections, it will be very hard and very big and complex scheme. But in general, thanks to the appearance of these technologies, we've developed cloud computing, which are necessary for modern machine learning. First of all, you have to store data in order to process it. Then you need processing resources in order to process the data. And why did we have this boom of AI and ML? Because the ideas originated 50 years ago in 1970s and so on. They did not have enough resources, they did not have enough computational powers and an ability to accumulate so much knowledge. Now, thanks to cloud computing, we can do this, and because of that, technological progress made another step. Next, on the timeline, for you to understand how it looked like in time, originally, we had C, programming language, then we had Linux. It was proprietary and closed at that time, and developers wanted to add their own edits. And Richard Stallman in 1983 published a set of utilities called GNU. You can just imagine an operating system, probably you know and use Windows. If you just install a bare operating system, you have a few applications, and you need an operating system to have to perform some tasks. And an OS would not be useful without those utilities, those useful programs. And those GNU utilities tools were something developed for free, and then they were shared with the community, because the original utilities were not good enough. That's why they changed them, that's why they streamlined, they modified them. Vendors disallowed those changes, and that's why the community decided to do it themselves. That's why the free software movement appeared. After that, well, first it was free software, then it was open source software. So because of the proprietary software, we got open source software. In 1991, we have the Linux kernel, and then we have this boom of the internet, because the Linux core or Linux kernel allowed us to create servers which could process information. Next, we have Apache project, and the synergy of GNU Linux and Apache became, let's say, the cornerstone server for the whole global internet. And the web technologies, together with open source operating system, basically became rivals, and they tried to improve. Apache and Linux operating system became more popular at the time too. Later we had mobile and non-mobile operating system, we have Android, we have iOS, we have Dockers, and then it was moving towards cloud computing to have more and more data, to accumulate more data, and to spend more computational resources for processing. Later it was resulted in big clusters, large farms for data processing. As a result, we have large language models, pre-trained neural networks, and this is the kind of technological timeline. This is what we have. Just a few words regarding the Why do I talk about open source? And the reason is that we have a technological festival, and I believe that technological companies should support the development of their industry.
How do you do that if you do not share with professionals, don't share your knowledge? Like in this famous video reel, like what about PT? Let's see what the PT company is doing about the open software. How do we promote this idea and support projects? First of all, I want to say that we have a security experts community that I've mentioned before, and the main goal of our community is about to motivate people to upload for the public access their developments. Like you do some program, you maybe automated some of your routine actions, share it with your colleagues and they'll be grateful to you. And through our example, we show how you can share knowledge and how do you create projects. We show and tell, like there is a Yermak projects. That's targeted for response professionals. And this is an example of how you can do something and share it with the public community. Next, now we are developing semantic technologies. Have you heard this very term, semantic technologies? Okay, very few of you, mostly maybe those who were speaking to me. Now, this is when we take that knowledge and the world around us and we try to formally describe it with a certain mathematical model for a computer to understand what we are speaking about, what a particular word means, what semantics, what is the meaning. And so in our community, we also develop and apply these technologies. And also, as I've mentioned before, my field is how to identify or expose hackers. So this knowledge in the very beginning we begin to publish. We are writing rules of how can you expose hackers, and we also upload the toolbox to be able to launch it. And this will be, I guess, more interesting for the tech professionals. We have several QR codes leading to the habr.ru. And basically, I'm done. Thank you for your attention. Share your knowledge and let's develop open source together. Thank you, Anton. Once again, can you please tell us why this PT company does it? I mean, developing open source, it looks like it's free for everyone. What's the profit? And I believe it is not about the business function, but about the social function, so to say. We have to combine against common threats. I mean, first of all, not to study the same threats like over and over again, because we're all in the same boat. In different vendors and companies, we're doing all the same projects and repetitive actions about repetitive problems. So if we join our efforts, we'll simply be much more efficient. And I believe on top of that, opening your own developments, it pushes technological progress forward. You're not reinventing the wheel, but based on something pre-existing, you're making the next step. And I believe that only a strong company can say, hey, I'm not afraid of competition. I'm willing to open up some of my developments. And I'm confident that I can do something even better than what we have already done. And then to create like a new Mac OS based on something open source. Yeah, like I was saying, the Mac OS is also rooted in open source software. That's quite a far-reaching approach, and let's give a round of applause. Thank you. Anton Kutepov from Positive Technologies Company.